everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to talk about the books that I read for Black History Month. So I thought that it would be a good idea to sort of group these books all together. I read most of them in February. I started them all in February, and then some bled over into March, but I have 4 books to talk about that I read that I think are good candidates for Black History Month, and I want to talk about them. So Libby has decided to join us there. Anyway, I also am sitting in a place that I don't normally sit in to film, but I wanted you to see my tulips because aren't they lovely? They're so pretty, and they help me think that someday maybe spring will arrive here in Maine. Right now, as you can see from the gloomy outside view, it is raining and gray outside here at my house. So spring is coming because, you know, a month ago that would have been snow, but it is rain today. So let's talk about the books that I picked up for Black History Month. And the first one was A Journal of a Black Queer Nurse by Britney Daniels. And this was a book that I buddy read with Butler. It's a memoir by a Black queer nurse. And I think that this is a really important perspective to read about and to read of the experience of a person in those situations, the nursing industry, the medical industry in the United States, from the perspective of being both a woman and Black and queer. The problems that I had with the book were not about the topic area or the personal anecdotes that she shared within the book. The problem that I had with it was I didn't think it was very well written, and it was very choppy in its presentation style, so that oftentimes things within they were kind of written in little snippets or little anecdotes, and things within those anecdotes didn't all flow together. They weren't from the same episode. So it became very disjointed and hard to follow along with. And I think it could have done with a lot more editing. I think the author was actually not well served by the publishing process. I think if she had been given some more editorial support, the book would have been better. But I want to separate out the technical aspect of it from the content of it, which I think is very important information. And obviously, like, people who work in the medical industry that are from marginalized identities experience a lot of racism and prejudice, and they have to deal with those type of microaggressions on a day-to-day basis, and that can be very harmful mentally to somebody and very wearing as they work through that. So that's all very important stuff to learn about. So I'm glad I read the book from that perspective. But it really was a difficult read in terms of the technical aspects. The next book I read was a nonfiction collection of essays, and that was The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And of course, Ta-Nehisi Coates needs no introduction. He's an extremely famous Black cultural critic. I've read 2 of his previous works of nonfiction. I read We Were 8 Years in Power, which I absolutely loved, and his book to his son. What was that one? I'm sure it is in here. Between the World and Me, which was just fabulous as well. He is so brilliant as a writer. I do not think that The Message was as high up in my estimation as We Were 8 Years in Power and Between the World and Me. Those 2 books were just phenomenal. And this book was really good. And with any other author, you'd be like, oh, this is just fabulous. But because I'm comparing The Message to those other 2 books, it suffers a little by comparison. This, like I said, is quite short. There are 3 essays in here. Ta-Nehisi Coates traveled to 3 different places and talks about how he experienced those trips as a Black man and compared, you know, those experiences with experiences in the United States in some cases, or experiences in the United States. So one was his trip to Africa, to the place that's considered the gateway of slavery. That was Dakar in Senegal. And he also goes to, he goes to Senegal, to Dakar, and then he goes to Columbia, South Carolina, to help a teacher who's fighting against his own book being banned in her school system. That one was really interesting and topical, obviously. And then Palestine. And so I thought they were all very good, but they did not, I think they were kind of forced together into this collection, and that did not help it. I also think is awful lot of similarities between this collection of essays and How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. And that, you know, I read How the Word is Passed, and I loved that book. I thought it was awesome. But this book really is quite similar to that book. And so that's another point of comparison that, you know, just because of the similarity in content, you can't help but make. I think Ta-Nehisi Coates has a lot of really important things to say about our culture and about our politics and about our history. And he writes it in a pretty amazing way. He's very brilliant, as, you know, anyone could tell you who's read his work before. So I definitely do recommend it. I mean, I gave this 5 stars. The only thing it's less than are the other 2 books by Ta-Nehisi Coates that I've read. So please don't think I'm trying to be critical of this at all. Just pointing out some places where I think, because if I had to rank his 3 books, this one would be in the 3rd place of the 3 books of his that I've read. Then the next book I read was a work of classic science fiction, and that is Patternmaster by Octavia E. Butler. This is the 4th book in her Patternmaster series, or Patterness series of novels that were written in the 70s and 80s. And so I thought this one was the weakest one out of the 4 in this particular series. In this particular episode, we are following Ta-Nehisi is his name, and he is like he's like a son of like the person who was first establishing this particular group of individuals, and they are all connected through mind control, or like they have connection in their minds. And the one who is sort of the head guy, the ancestor, controls everybody else through this mind control thing. And T-Ray is very powerful, but he's very young, and he is trying to break free and sort of forge his own path. And he keeps getting thwarted by other members of his community. And he has to try to escape someone who wants to kill him, and try to make his way to this leader to try to ask for his help. And so we're following T-Ray as he tries to make this journey and escape what he thinks is going to be his certain death. And I just felt that the reason why the story itself was good, Octavia Butler tells a great tale, but the ending is the end of this series, and there's so many unanswered questions. I felt really frustrated at the end because of all the unanswered questions that I had. But what Octavia Butler is interrogating in these science fiction stories is colonialism, racism, why some people think that they're better than other people. You know, why is there this hierarchy of people? Why aren't all people just the same? And what exactly is a person? And so she's interrogating all those questions in the way that the best science fiction does interrogate a lot of social issues. So definitely glad that I read this, and glad to have finished this book. This is part of my reading that I'm doing in order to read all of Octavia Butler's work in order of publication. No, I'm not reading them in order of publication. I shouldn't say that. I'm reading them in order of how they go together as series. So Patternmaster, or Patterness, was her first series. So I've completed all the books in that series, and then I will go on to her next series in publication order, and then I'll read all of those. So that's how we're doing it. And so that feels good to have that. Ooh, that book just fell on the floor. Have that part of the project completed. And then last but not least, the 4th book that I picked up for Black History Month was this nonfiction work of history. This is 400 Souls, A Community History of African America, 1619 to 2019. I've talked about this book quite extensively. This is edited by Ibram X. Kendi and Keisha and Blain. And this is excellent. Highly recommend. This is the perfect book for Black History Month. This takes you through history on the North American continent from the perspective of people of African descent who were brought here against their will. Starting in 1619 and then proceeding in 5-year increments throughout the years until you get to 2019. And each 5-year section is written by a different Black author. So we have sections in here written by all different famous Black authors and some others that I had never heard of before. So you get a great combination of known authors and unknown authors talking about all different aspects of history, famous people, important events, social concepts, sports, music, all different aspects of history. And I learned so much from this book. I also think that because it's broken up into these small sections, so each essay is only like 4 or 5 pages long, like it doesn't require a huge commitment from you, and it's very digestible. So I just thought it was just fantastic, and because you can make so many connections as you read through this. So there were lots of things that I had never heard of before, but there were things that I had read about before, but I was able to make new connections. And it's very thought-provoking, and really makes you think about American history from a broader perspective. And so I very much appreciated it. I thought it was excellent. I buddy read this with my friend Rachel, and we both agreed that this was a fabulous read, and we got a lot out of it. And it's also a really excellent book to buddy read, and because you can have just amazing conversations based on the information that's provided in this book. So highly, highly, highly recommend. Please pick this one up if you have not yet done so. And please don't be afraid of its length. The text itself is about 400 pages, but like I said, because it's broken up in these smaller chunks, it makes it very digestible and easy to pick up and put down. So it took us about a little over a month, I would say close to 6 weeks to read this. And we took our time because we wanted to really take in the information. So yeah, very much recommended for any time, but especially for Black History Month. So those are the 4 books that I picked up to educate myself and to get more reading done in the area of Black history. I hope that you find something in there that you think would be interesting to you. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read. I'll talk to you later.